For men, loneliness isn't weakness. It's a hidden cliff edge. Society refuses to admit, and today, I'll expose 5 dangers of male loneliness that no one dares to talk about. More importantly, I'll show you how to flip it into your greatest strength. Stick with me, this might change the way you see your life. One of the biggest hidden dangers of male loneliness begins right after divorce. When a marriage falls apart, it isn't just the end of a romantic relationship, it's the collapse of a man's entire social foundation. Think about it. For years, maybe even decades, your wife was your primary point of connection to the world. She was the one you shared meals with, planned holidays with, maybe even built your daily routines around. When that disappears, the silence hits you like a freight train. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Divorce doesn't just take away a partner, it often takes away the children. 2. In many cases, courts award custody primarily to the mother, which means a father, almost overnight, goes from seeing his kids every single day to maybe, just maybe, getting a weekend visit twice a month. That shift is brutal, and it leaves men feeling like they've lost not just their marriage, but their role as a father, their identity, their anchor in the world. Imagine this. One day, you're in a busy house, with voices, laughter, arguments, noise, the chaos of family life. The next day, you're in an empty apartment, staring at the walls, eating dinner alone. It feels like your entire social lifeline has been cut in one stroke. Suddenly, the woman is gone, the kids are gone, the family friends are gone, and you're standing alone on an island, with no bridge back to the mainland. This is where the danger of loneliness turns deadly, because men often don't have the same wide support networks that women do. When women divorce, they might have sisters, girlfriends, co-workers, ready to step in with emotional support. But for men, most of their social life was tied directly to their wife and families. Once that's gone, they discover how thin the rest of their connections really are. And here's another layer of pain. The kids who used to be a source of joy and companionship can become distant, sometimes even poisoned against the father by a bitter ex. That kind of alienation cuts deeper than any breakup ever could, because it's not just losing your kids physically, it's losing the bond, the trust, the closeness you once had. That loss is like a silent wound that never fully heals. Now add to this the cultural narrative that men should tough it out, stay strong, and don't complain. So instead of reaching out for help, many men retreat further into themselves. They bottle up the pain, they avoid talking about it, and they slowly sink into isolation. That's when loneliness transforms into something darker: depression, bitterness, even self-destruction. The truth is, divorce doesn't just end a marriage. It can dismantle a man's entire world, his home, his family, his friendships, even his sense of purpose. And that is one of the hidden dangers of male loneliness, one that almost nobody dares to admit out loud. The media loves to repeat this phrase, toxic masculinity. They say men are lonely because we don't know how to open up, because we're too cold, too proud, too unemotional. But here's the truth. Men don't bond the same way women do, and that's not a flaw. That's not toxicity. That's just masculinity. I think about it. Women can sit in a coffee shop for hours, face to face, sharing every detail of their feelings. That's their way of connecting. Men, we don't do that. We bond shoulder to shoulder, through action, through movement, through shared struggle. When we throw a ball around in the backyard, when we go fishing at dawn, barely talking, but sitting in the same boat, when we're side by side at the gym, pushing weights and pushing each other harder, that's when men open up. Not in a therapy circle, not in some forced group exercise where you're told to cry in front of strangers. For men, trust is built through doing, not through talking. But here's the danger. Society misunderstands this difference. Instead of meeting men where they are, society tries to reshape them. The narrative says, if you're not willing to bare your soul in a group circle, you're emotionally stunted. If you'd rather play golf with your buddies than sit in a feelings workshop, you're closed off. And when men reject these spaces because they don't work for us, society calls us broken. That misunderstanding only makes the loneliness worse. Because instead of creating spaces where men can thrive, sports, brotherhood, building things together, society keeps tearing them down. Remember men's clubs, fraternities, brotherhood groups? Over the last few decades, most have been labeled outdated, even discriminatory. The few spaces where men could naturally connect have been dismantled, leaving fewer outlets than ever. So what happens? Men retreat. We stop looking for connection because the only options offered feel unnatural. even humiliating. And imagine forcing a wolf to act like a sheep. That's what happens when men are told their natural way of bonding is wrong. Instead of leaning into our masculinity, we're told to suppress it. And the result? More isolation, more disconnection, more loneliness. The irony is this: the very traits society criticizes, stoicism, competitiveness, toughness, are the same traits that can make men powerful allies to one another. A tough workout partner who pushes you to your limits? That's connection. A buddy who shows up at 2 a.m. to help you fix a flat tire? No questions asked? That's love. Masculine love doesn't always look like tears and long conversations. Sometimes, it looks like action, loyalty, sacrifice. When we misunderstand masculinity, we misunderstand men. And when we misunderstand men, we leave them alone, judged, unsupported, disconnected. That's one of the hidden dangers of male loneliness. Not that men can't connect, but that society refuses to value the way men naturally do it. Here's a perspective shift that almost nobody teaches men. Being alone is not the same thing as being lonely. See, loneliness is when you're isolated against your will. It's when you're craving connection, but finding none. It feels heavy, empty, even suffocating. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice. It's when you take time for yourself, with intention, with purpose, and with control. One drains you, the other builds you. Let me tell you a story from my childhood. At first, it felt like torture, but then something interesting happened. I had a piggy bank filled with coins, and in my boredom, I started making up games. Heads versus tails, quarters, outranking nickels. I built little battlefields, strategies, and stories. An entire world created from nothing. Hours would pass, and by the time they came to release me, I was so deep in my imagination that I didn't even want to leave. That was my first real lesson. Solitude isn't always suffering. Sometimes, it's a doorway to creativity, to reflection, to growth. Loneliness is a prison, cold, empty, locked from the outside. But solitude? Solitude is a gym. It's where you train your mind, sharpen your focus, where you build yourself into something stronger. Fast forward to adulthood. When men are left alone after a divorce, or when life gets quiet, they often mistake solitude for loneliness. They sit in silence, thinking, nobody cares about me. Nobody's here for me. And the more they dwell on that thought, the darker it gets. That's loneliness taking over. But if you flip the frame, if you say, this is my time to rebuild, my time to reflect, my time to get stronger, suddenly, that same silence becomes fuel instead of poison. In solitude, you can read, learn, lift weights, walk in nature, plan your future. You can get to know yourself again. And that's something many men never do. We spend years chasing work, chasing women, chasing distractions. But rarely do we stop and ask, who am I? Really? Solitude gives you that chance. Most of society confuses the two. They look at a man sitting alone and assume he's lonely. But often, that man might be at peace, recharging, plotting his next move. And that's the difference. Loneliness drains life out of you. Solitude puts life back in. When men learn to turn loneliness into solitude, to shift from prison to gym, they stop feeling like victims, and they start feeling like warriors in training. And that shift changes everything. One of the most dangerous parts of male loneliness isn't the silence around you. It's the noise inside your head. See? When men are isolated, they often start to ruminate. They replay every mistake, every failure, every heartbreak over and over again. It's like watching the worst scene of your life on a giant movie screen, and the remote is broken. You can't fast forward. You can't turn it off. All you can do is sit there and absorb it until you start believing that's your entire life story. And the more you replay it, the more real it feels. A bad breakup? Suddenly, it becomes proof that you're unlovable. A financial setback? Now it feels like you're destined to fail forever. Rumination turns small cuts into mortal wounds because you keep picking at them in your mind. This is where loneliness transforms into depression, because loneliness is painful. Yes, but depression is crippling. It drains your energy, it steals your motivation, it convinces you that nothing will ever get better. And worst of all, it makes you believe you don't deserve better. I've seen men fall into this spiral after divorce, after losing their job, after being cut off from family. At first, they just sit alone in the evenings, maybe with a drink, maybe with the TV. But soon, the silence gets louder than the screen. The mind starts whispering, you're worthless. You're forgotten. nobody cares. And if you keep listening long enough, those whispers turn into a scream you can't ignore. It's like being stuck in quicksand. The harder you struggle in your own head, the deeper you sink. And here's the cruel irony. The more depressed you feel, the less likely you are to reach out for help. The depression doesn't just isolate you, it convinces you to isolate yourself even further. But here's the truth most men need to hear. Those thoughts, they're not facts. They're echoes. Echoes of pain, of fear, of rejection, and echoes fade when you stop feeding them. That's why it's critical to recognize rumination for what it is, a trap. When you catch yourself replaying the same scenes, you need to break the loop. Step outside, move your body, call a friend, write down your thoughts, and then tear the paper up. Do anything that interrupts the cycle, because every interruption is like throwing a rope into the quicksand. The danger isn't that men feel pain. The danger is when they relive the pain so often, it becomes their identity. And once you start to believe, I am loneliness, I am failure, I am unwanted, you're not just lonely anymore, you're lost. This is the silent killer behind male loneliness. Not the empty room, not the quiet nights, but the endless rerun of your darkest memories. And if you don't break that loop, it will break you. One of the most overlooked cures for male loneliness is brotherhood. See, when men feel isolated, the first instinct is often to fill the gap with another romantic relationship. Divorce hits hard, so the reflex is to run straight back into dating, to try and find a woman who can fix the emptiness. But here's the truth. That usually makes things worse, because if you haven't healed, if you haven't understood yourself, you end up dragging the same pain into a new relationship. It's like pouring water into a cracked glass. No matter how much you fill it, it still leaks. What men really need in those moments isn't another romance. It's brotherhood, solid male friendships, men who can look you in the eye and say, I've been there too. Men who don't judge you, but also don't let you sink. I think about it. Women have endless social support, girlfriends, sisters, groups, communities. But men, too often, our only friend was our wife. When that disappears, the cupboard is empty. That's why finding or rebuilding male friendships is not optional. It's survival. And the beautiful thing is this. Men bond fast when we actually share experiences. You don't need to sit in a circle talking about your deepest fears. Just join a softball team. Even if you're the worst player, go bowling. Hit the gym with another guy. Go fishing, grab a beer, work on a car together, shoulder to shoulder. That's where conversations naturally flow. That's where trust grows. Here's the metaphor I want you to remember. One strong brother in your corner is worth more than chasing 10 women who don't care about you. Because a true brother won't just be there in good times. He'll show up at 2 a.m. When your car breaks down, he'll push you through your last rep at the gym. He'll tell you the hard truth when you're slipping, and stand with you when the world turns its back. That kind of loyalty is priceless. And yet, society keeps discouraging men from building these bonds. Men's clubs, lodges, groups where guys could gather, most have been torn down or labeled toxic. But the truth is, men need spaces where we can be men, where we can laugh, compete, challenge each other, and yes, open up in our own way. Without that, men drift. With it, men thrive. So if you're feeling lonely, don't make the mistake of thinking the cure is another relationship. Start with brotherhood. Rebuild your circle. Find even 1 or 2 men you can count on, because brotherhood is a lifeline, a shield, and a mirror. The hidden danger of male loneliness is isolation. The hidden cure is connection. And for men, the strongest connection doesn't always come from romance. It comes from brotherhood. So let's recap. Divorce cuts men off from their families. Society misunderstands masculinity. Solitude can be strength, not weakness. Loneliness, unchecked, turns into depression. Brotherhood is the cure men need. Loneliness can destroy you, but solitude can transform you. Use your time alone to discover who you are, build strength, and become the kind of man others are drawn to. If this video hit home, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with a man who needs to hear this today. Stay healthy, stay strong, and remember, solitude is not loneliness.